Hello, summer draws to a close. I'm personally very happy about that, but some people might not be. So I thought I'd talk about books that particularly made me chuckle. I've noticed that most people do kind of glossy thumbnails, and my friend does it as well. And I was wondering, like, should I do one? Because I usually don't bother. What would mine be for this? I don't think that is for me, mainly because I'm quite lazy. I've mentioned books that make me laugh, such as Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy before, but I thought I would talk about some that mostly I have not mentioned. First up is Jenny Lawson. She's written a few books. She actually started off with a blog, the Bloggess, and a friend of mine got me her book Let's Pretend This Never Happened quite a while ago, and I wasn't really sure what it was going to be about, because I thought it's just some girl that I don't know talking about stuff, but she was raised in a rural area of America, and she had quite an eccentric family. Her dad was into taxidermy, but I think even without that she'd be funny. I think some people can take something really ordinary, such as a day hanging out with her pets, and just make it really funny, whereas some other people can have the funniest thing happen to them, but the way they describe it and the way that they tell it, I'm thinking of myself, would be, it comes out, you know, quite boring. But Jenny Lawson is anything but boring, and I highly recommend her books. I do really want to get her other ones, but Let's Pretend This Never Happened was really funny, so I recommend that one. Next is quite a strange one. It's called A Primate's Memoir, Love, Death and Baboons in East Africa by Robert M. Sapolsky. And you might be thinking, how is studying baboons in Africa going to be a really hilarious book? But it's been a long time since I read it, but when I was a student doing my degree, we did lots of different kinds of writing, and this one particular module was travel writing, nature and travel. So we had to read this book, and I expected the driest thing, but I was in hysterics. My housemates were asking me what's so funny, but you can't explain what's funny without reading out loud the entire bit, and then it's kind of not funny anymore. But he's got a really good sense of humour, and makes some really interesting observations about baboons. Some were actually really quite surprising. And from what I remember, it says quite a lot about us as a species as well. But in case that might be a bit much for you during the summer holidays, or what's left of them, there is this. I've got lots of comedians' books, such as I've got one by Steve Coogan and a couple by the Mighty Boosh. In case you haven't realised, I like absurdist, strange and surreal comedy. And Vic and Bob are two of my favourites. And this book is Vic Reeve's. And I don't know if you knew this, you probably did, but he also did art. He did an art degree, and he does art, not just like stupid ones, but he does art properly. But this is mostly daft, so it's all good fun. Engineers have teamed up to predict that the motorcycle of the future will look like this one. Some apes like me have developed elaborate hairstyles. I'm some kind of baboon type thing. So that's just daft fun. One I've mentioned before, it's quite a recent one, so I wanted to mention it, is Andrew J. Lambert's Circus of the Flesh. I've talked about this in more detail in the other video, which I will put below. It's kind of like an Victorian opiate ramble of sideshows, and surprisingly very funny. Okay, you may have noticed that the camera has slightly moved because I packed up and then remembered I forgot one. And this shows how important this was for me to include. I set the whole thing up again just to tell you about The Disaster Artist by Greg Sestero. You may have heard of it already. What I was saying about Jenny Lawson being able to take an ordinary situation and make it really funny, Greg Sestero has a really bizarre situation, which is knowing Tommy Wiseau, the guy who made that terrible film The Room, and he got roped into helping him out with it, and takes that and then makes it even funnier on top. I was constantly reading bits out to people, texting people with passages, and my friend and I have a thing where a couple of weeks a year we'll have like a creative retreat. I'll do writing and he'll do artwork, and I was exhausted and tired and aching, and that book, reading that in the evenings, really got me through. So Greg Sestero, The Disaster Artist, I haven't laughed at a book for as much as that for a long time. It is absolutely hilarious. Okay, and enjoy what's left of your summer. Have a jolly old time, and let me know what books made you laugh in the comments. Bye.